We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We're kind of down to the wire with this one. I was still prepping stuff like 20 minutes before we started. Tom's like just settling into his chair now. But here we are, ready to record.
Yeah, if you had called me and said, "Can we push the podcast back?" I would have said no, because tomorrow is day before Lent starts, and while I am not a hugely religious person, I do like doing Lent. It's just a good way to change up your habits. So for my children, I always encourage them to do something, not give something up, because I think they're too little to give stuff up. I mean, how many vices do they really have? But usually they'll do stuff like they'll go to soup kitchens and they'll do stuff like that, which is really good for them. It kind of exposes them to a side of the world. So my wife and I are going out to dinner because Fat Tuesday. Going out to dinner tomorrow night. We were supposed to go on a date this weekend, but we fought the whole time, so we're trying again.
Okay.
Date take 2. Married life is awesome. Yeah. So, and then this morning, I had a sick child that I had to deal with, and he wasn't really sick. He was just a little bit sick. He had a low-grade fever the night before, so we just kind of let him sleep in. So I was puttering around the house. I was running around doing a bunch of things that needed to be done. He slept in. When he got up, he was fine. So I got him dressed and out the door and ready. And as I was walking out the door, I was like, oh, I forgot to make myself a cup of coffee. I haven't had coffee yet.
Okay.
That's all right. I'll just get it later. Just kept forgetting. So I spent all day not having coffee. And when you drink as much coffee as I do, by about 3 o'clock, I hit the wall and went,
headache?
No, I rarely get those. But I do get extremely sluggish and quite irritable. So about 3 o'clock, I was like, all right, nobody talk to me. I'm angry right now, and it's all your fault. So I still haven't had any coffee. I do have some water, though. It's not quite the same thing.
Bit late now. Now it's just going to keep you up all night. So
can't do it now. That's what happened. I said I was really tired, and you were like, "You always say you're tired, Tom," which is true, but I am always tired. And usually, right before this podcast, in order to make sure I can maintain at least some semblance of cognition throughout the podcast, I usually take a power nap right before this. But it was like 7 o'clock, and it might have been a little bit earlier than that. And my wife was getting ready to leave to go pick up one of my sons from Boy Scouts, and I'm like, I'm gonna go lie down for a second. This is probably not gonna work. I don't feel very tired right at this moment. I passed out until about 8:22 when my wife walked in and said, "Did you want me to wake you up at some point?" I'm like, "Yeah, wake me up before you go get what's his name from Scouts." She goes, "Go get him. I'm already back." Oh no. So now I'll probably be up all night too on top of all of that. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. That's a very good place to get us because we do see that quite readily. YouTube.com/C/AVRant, where these videos are posted. So we do a podcast, which is audio, of course, and then we do the same video twice, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
One video is the raw behind the scenes. It's what YouTube recorded for us while we were basically talking to each other. And then we do a finished video, which Rob puts up because he likes to, which is a little bit more polished. And by a little bit, I mean 100% more polished. So you can check those out there. If you'd like to comment on that, feel free, but we're going to ignore it because we don't go to YouTube because it's a den of vile iniquity. Anyways, if you want to email us directly or contact us directly, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom@avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. You can also hit our producer, Austin. Austin, his Twitter is @Austin, TEN, not TIN, TEN, Pond, @Austin Pond for his Twitter. He has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about polyvinyl alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a slime making podcast. Basically, it's all about slime. Yeah, they're very, very, very meticulous in their measurements.
I've seen it go awry, so it's better to be spot on with the details.
Yeah, they got a real problem with people who just use diluted glue. Like, you have to go get the PVA powder and then boil it or whatever. It's what you boil the water, then you dump the powder, and then you stir it, and then it clumps up. And there's all sorts of voodoo they say you have to do to make sure that it doesn't clump and all. It's really quite. I mean, it should be a kids podcast. You would think, right? It's totally not. They curse like sailors. It's terrible. Not good.
Not for the little ones.
Not for kids. Not. And that's FW or whatever it is.
That's right.
So
we watch movies. Self-explanatory.
Self-explanatory. That's right. Very angry slime making podcast. Angry slime. I did get an email from a listener with some suggestions.
That's right. It's mentioned in our listeners of the week.
I printed it out. It's right there on the floor. I didn't use it this week, but maybe I'll use it next week. We'll see.
Yes.
All right. We'd like to start off by thanking our listeners of the week. Our listeners of the week, people who support the podcast in some way. We'll start off with Carl and James. They went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. You can find that's a PayPal donation, and they donated some money to us through PayPal. It's great. Thank you very much. We really appreciate those monies going into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other such things. So we want to thank Carl and James.
Yeah, Carl, James, thank you very much for those donations.
We also want to thank our 53 patrons over at Patreon. Patreon.com is a website where you can subscribe to get the monthly amount of money taken out of whatever card you put there, and it will give it to the artists you want to support. And we have 53 patrons, and we want to thank all of them. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
That's right. Yeah, over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thank you so much to the 53 patrons who are supporting us and donating to us each month automatically. Yeah. It's great.
I know at least one person, too. I got an email that said that they changed their subscription from like $1 to like $3, which is like $3 a month or whatever. So, thank you. In particular, if you were that person whose email I immediately deleted from Patreon. I saw it, but went, okay, thank you. I gotta go. One of these days, I'm going to be I'm not retired. I'm going to be retired from kids, and this podcast is going to get it's going to take off. When I get started,
it's going to be wall-to-wall ads, just the polar opposite of what it is today.
Right now, it's going to be just me shilling stuff. Anthony is one of the people who wants to support the podcast, and he found a different way to do it. And he did it by talking us up to manufacturers. He bought a Denon AVR-X4300W from Accessories for Less, and he let them know they heard about it from us, and that he's very happy with this purchase, which is good for both of us, them and us, and for him as well, I guess. Chris bought a SVS SB12 NSD and let them know it was because of a recommendation. Didn't think those were still on sale, but apparently you can still find them on Amazon.
Yep.
So that's exciting. Carl wrote to Charlie Jones from Surge X to let him know how much he enjoyed his interview that Charlie did with us, and to let Charlie know that he purchased an SX 1115 rack-mounted power conditioner. So wasn't Carl the one that was asking about rack-mounted stuff like a week or two ago?
I don't think that was Carl who was asking about
that wasn't him.
Power
You know what? We never mentioned Surge X when that we answered that question.
But
it totally flipped on me.
No, that was rack mounted. That was rack mounted HDMI switcher. That's what we were talking about most recently. That was rack mounted. Was an HDMI switcher. So that isn't Surge X's purview.
No, it wouldn't be. But we should try to remember Surge X. And Bruno from Belgium wants our We Watch Movies intros to continue. So he sent Tom a list of ideas to help keeping the running gag. I don't know what he's talking about. But I did get that list. So,
that's right. Thank you, Bruno. I appreciate it.
We Watch Movies. It's always been about angry slime making.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, thank you to Anthony, Chris, Carl. Congratulations on those purchases. All very nice products that I'm sure you'll enjoy. And I did want to say, okay, so this is this going to be the last time we mention the YouTube thing? I guess possibly next week, although that'll be
how close are we?
Day before. We are 70 subscribers away from where we need to be, which is remarkably close and tantalizingly so. So for those who might not be fully aware, YouTube has changed their partnership program agreement. you have to have 1,000 subscribers and a certain number of hours of views in order to remain in their partnership program, which first of all allows you to be monetized, which we don't really care about. But
care about that.
What we do care about is that certain features in terms of being able to schedule when you post your videos and things like that ahead of time, those features get taken away if you're not eligible to be part of the partnership program anymore. We do care about that, and since it is free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, doesn't cost you a thing. If you're one of the folks who's been like, I like this podcast, I'd like to help these guys out, but I just don't have money to give them right now, which we completely understand, here is a free way that you could really help us out, including if you just want to like make a dummy Gmail account and subscribe to YouTube on that dummy Gmail account that you never look at again and therefore never ever bothers you, that would totally help us out.
I would. Yeah. I rarely advocate gaming the system or doing something that's even the least bit dishonest. But this is listen. We monetized the podcast on YouTube because they made us in order to get those features.
Yeah,
like,
that's
I didn't want to get monetized. I wasn't interested in making money through YouTube. I didn't think it was ever going to happen. So, fine, I'll monetize. Just give me the features. Now they're like, well, you guys aren't big enough to be monetized, so we're taking the features away. I'm like, I don't want to be monetized. Just give me the features. Just give me the features.
So, given how close we are, I really hope we can do it. It has to be by February 20th. In order for us to remain unchanged. So, yeah, if you'd like to help us out, please do so.
I will not be complaining about the heat in this room today because the AC's on.
Nice.
It's February 12th.
Yeah.
And the AC's on, and I feel like a dirty, dirty boy because of it. I feel so bad. I'm like really rather tell the people, I'm like, how do I have it? This was like last week. How do we have the AC on? Because that's what I did after the last podcast. I went out there and turned the AC on. Like, how do we have the AC on in the beginning of February? Everybody's like, well, I don't know. It's Florida. That's what happens.
Completely unrelated, but related to what we were saying about YouTube. I'll just give out our YouTube address in case somebody wants it. YouTube.com/C/AVRant.
And all you have to do is hit subscribe.
That's right.
Don't hit anything else. Just don't have to hit anything else. I don't think you have to hit the little button. There's like a bell.
The bell.
Too.
That's the alert. Yeah, I don't think you need that.
I don't think you need
that.
That
helps podcast or helps YouTube videos climb the like chart thingy of how popular they are if people hit the bell. But whatever. All we care about is getting 1,000 subscribers so we can stay in the stupid YouTube program, which has nothing to do with us. That's their rule change.
Their rules. So. Not ours. They're making the rules. We're just gaming them.
YouTube.com/C/AVRant. And next week will be the last time you ever hear me mention it because we either make it or we don't.
Yeah. So, new trailers came out this last week too, right? Well, some new trailers. Deadpool 2.
Oh, yeah, the full trailer thingy.
That was good. Solo, saw that. Yeah, that was good. Was it the Super Bowl last weekend? It couldn't have been. It was the weekend before that, right?
I mean, not this most recent weekend. It was the weekend before.
Yeah. So, before. We talked about the Super Bowls and stuff.
Yeah, those were like the teasers, and then the full ones came out. Whatever.
Can I voice a little a voice of dissent here about everything in the universe? I don't understand if there's really a lot of outrage about like Solo is like the most controversial.
There's no outrage. I mean, everyone is always outraged about everything, which means nobody is outraged about anything.
I'm just a little confused how you can be upset about a movie that you haven't seen yet. And not only that, like, there's not even enough trailers out. Like, by the time the last trailer for Justice League came out, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Yeah. They spoiled the whole movie. I'm upset about that. Let's start with that. And then, it looks real bad. So I can understand that. But you still have to give the movie a chance until you see it. But this is like the first teaser trailer, I guess. And it's... I mean, what are you gonna tell?
Look, it wasn't their personal fanfic up there on screen, so it's bad.
But how many? I don't believe there's like a contingent of people out there that are like already super angry about this movie. They're getting their boycott.
Contingent of people who are angry about anything, literally anything.
But they're making it sound like it's everybody. I'm not that.
I ignore all that. That's just noise, background noise at this point.
Ron Howard helped direct this movie. It seems.
Yeah, he came. They fired the original directors and brought him in. So
right, they parted from creative differences or whatever. Yeah. I love how to the lengths they'll go to say how much they want to work with them and they're so talented and blah blah blah. But and it sounds to me like what was happening was too much improvisation. They were just kind of like going off script, and the Disney people were like, "Ooh, no, we're not doing that."
No. You stay within the machine. That's what you got to do with Disney.
All right, let's get to the news here. Sony unveiled their pricing for the new TV models they announced at CES 2018. The new A8F OLEDs are more expensive than the current A1E prices, $3,000 and $4,000 versus $2,800 and $3,500. And the X800F series is almost as expensive as the X930E series from last year. So apparently, Sony thinks that money that the tax cut gave you should be theirs.
I was disappointed by this news because everyone sort of expected the A8F OLEDs to be less expensive than the A1E because the design is simpler.
Sure.
But apparently not. Although, I mean, by this time next year, I'm sure the A8Fs will be less expensive because the prices will come down. But when they're first coming out, they're more expensive than the A1E, so that was disappointing. And then the X800F, which we thought was replacing the X800E series, instead is closer in price to the X930E series from last year. So prices all went up on that. Now, they did improve the performance of the X800F series, and they gave it the X1 Extreme processor. But still, all around, a little bit disappointed that Sony is charging these prices.
What is the hierarchy after Extreme? Right, so you go.
They've got the X1 Ultimate coming out for after that.
So
it's not out in anything
Ultra.
yet, but they
Extreme and then Ultra.
Ultimate,
Ultra Extreme,
Omega.
Yeah, Omega works.
Yeah. Anyway, the big one to me was the X800F series has a 75-inch model and an 85-inch model.
That's pretty big.
Last year, the X800E topped out at 75 inches, and that got down to as low as $2,500 for the 75-incher. And then it's been $2,700 for most of the time recently. So we were like, oh, maybe $3,000 or something for when brand new for the 75-inch X800F. No, $4,000 for the 75 versus $2,500 for the previous series last year. That's a big price delta. And then the 85-incher is $7,000. So I remember somebody was hoping maybe they could get an 85-incher for around $2,500. Well, it ain't going to be the X800F.
It's not going to be
right
from
now.
Sony. That's for sure.
I mean, I don't even by the end of the year, I don't know if 7,000 is going to erode down to 2,500. So
no,
yeah.
I don't think so. I guess in happier Sony news, they announced 2 new soundbars that can play back Atmos and DTS X, as well as pass through 4K HDR and Dolby Vision at lower price points. The 3.1 HT-Z9F is $900. Really? $900? And you can optionally add a pair of wireless surround speakers, which are only $250 a piece. The HT-X9000F is $600. It's actually only 2.1, no upward firing drivers. So all of the Atmos and DTS X effects are faked via DSP. That's just that second one?
The second one. Well, the first one is 3.1 as well. It does not have any upward firing drivers either.
So that's all DSP for both of them then?
So it's all DSP for both of them. So previously, full Dolby Atmos soundbars were pretty much universally north of $1,000. A lot of them were tipping around $1,500, which makes you go, why don't you just get an AV receiver and 7.1 speaker package or something. Right. So it's nice to see something that is at least compatible down at $600, especially the scenario I was thinking is we've had several people now who want like 2 setups, like a Zone 2.
Right.
And the issue is that we've been discussing on the podcast recently is that if both zones don't support the same audio, then you end up with the lowest common denominator. So here's a way. Now, $600 still isn't exactly cheap, but it's not so expensive that it's out of the realm. This might be a way to at least add both Atmos and DTS X, because a lot of times only Atmos was supported.
Yeah.
So you could have that second zone that now supports both of the immersive audio formats, plus it passes through 4K HDR and Dolby Vision, which not all soundbars were doing previously. A lot were, but not all. So I just like having that in the back pocket as a possible recommendation to solve some issues.
All right. For anyone interested in making their own movie server using Ultra HD Blu-ray backups, you might want to check out the UHD section of Make MKV's forums. There have been a lot of developments when it comes to backing up Ultra HD Blu-rays. It's more work than regular Blu-rays and DVDs, but it's looking promising now. So
Yeah,
how
so
are these people not totally in jail, by the way? Just where are they working out of? Like Venezuela or something? I mean, where are they? How are they not in jail?
I'm not quite sure. So yeah, when it comes to the Ultra HD Blu-rays, so if you just take an Ultra HD Blu-ray and put it in an actual Ultra HD Blu-ray drive, like an official one,
Right, sure.
for a PC, Make MKV can't do anything with that. So the first step is you have to get what they've dubbed as Ultra HD friendly drives, which means they aren't officially Ultra HD Blu-ray drives, but they are capable of reading a BDXL Blu-ray.
Okay. Or you get one of those off the back of a van behind the target? Or
No,
what?
essentially it's older ones. It's older PC drives that were compatible with BDXL, but were never officially Ultra HD Blu-ray drives. Now, not all of them, especially the triple layer discs, a lot of them have difficulty reading the triple layer movie discs. There aren't very many of them, but that seems to triple them up. So there's one particular Asus drive that's like the top recommendation is the BW16D1. That's like the one that everyone says to get. So first of all, there's getting that, and then there is no like universal able to decrypt the discs thing that's going on. So it's happening like movie by movie, but people have basically figured out how to dump the key out when the thing is inserted, send that off to whoever the magical people are who managed to like clone that key and put it back into like a text file that you have to enter to make MKV. So yeah, this is total piracy, folks.
Oh,
but
doesn't sound like it at all. Not at all.
But
sounds way
so
legit.
so was just putting in a Blu-ray or a DVD for that matter. You weren't supposed to do, especially in the States. This is like all illegal because there's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that just says no, you can't do any of this stuff. But in a place like Canada, where I live, the law is a little bit grayer in that it is completely legal for me to have a backup of a disc that I own. Now, making that backup is probably illegal, but having the backup isn't. So,
sir, this is like pounds and pounds of marijuana in your house. Did you grow this yourself? No, I didn't. All right, well, we're good then. That's not how it should work. That's not how it should work. It's either illegal or it's not. It's like, where'd you get these things? Can't tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, having a backup of something that I own, and as long as I'm not distributing it or selling it or getting rid of the original after I make the copy, all that, so it's okay for me to have the backup for it to exist. Just the actual breaking of the copy protection to get
the
there.
whole idea of the backup is like if something happens to the original, you have a backup. So
That's
if they
right.
come in and you're like, "Where's the original?" I lost the original. I lost it. That's why I made the backup in case I lost it because I have children. They lose things. He's like, okay, you're going to jail. $10,000.
Regardless, you were actually the one, because remember there was that fellow who wanted to put the window at the back of his theater so that he could access his disc systems?
Yeah.
Right? He was going to have like a separate equipment closet, but he wanted a window at the back. And you were like, forget all that. Just put it all on a server. And I was like, but he wants Ultra HD Blu-rays. Well, if you want to go through all the rigmarole of this, and that's actually, they have an Ultra HD Blu-ray FAQ, frequently asked questions thing, right on the Make MKV forum. So that's got the answers. If you want to do this, there you go. And I wanted to point out to people, playing back the actual MKVs that result, not super smooth all the time under Windows 10, because Windows 10, for whatever reason, I've been reading that Microsoft has like revoked the built-in support for H.265, that was like there originally in Windows 10, but then they like took it away. So you either needed like a graphics card that hardware accelerates H.265 decoding, or you need a pretty beefy CPU. Otherwise, your computer playing it back kind of chugs. Now, VLC, that software player that everybody uses for everything, that wasn't working so great with these backups that had HDR on them, but they just released VLC 3.0, which has like added all the support for all the 4K and HDR things. So that's really great. But you know what's even easier? An NVIDIA Shield. because the NVIDIA Shield hardware decodes it. You can have Plex on there that actually supports 4K and HDR. HDR10 only, no Dolby Vision in these backups, but that's probably okay. So yeah, I mean, you get one of these drives. Your actual computer that you're using to make the backups doesn't even have to be able to play them, and then you get an NVIDIA Shield to act as your Plex server and playback device. Could be a solution.
Could be. All right, so I'm noticing a bunch of audio dropouts on your end, which means you're probably noticing a lot of audio dropouts on my end. That's because I forgot to hardwire in. So I'm going to do that in just a second here. So when I walk away from the screen and maybe knock over my computer, because that happens about half the time.
Okay. Well, you want me to read the comments then? I can do that.
Yeah, why don't you at least start with the comments? I just hit the camera twice.
Okay.
So it's going to be like that. Okay.
Well, Justin Not Bieber over on Facebook, he wanted to weigh in on Rob M's question from last week. Rob M wanted some Bluetooth headphones because he's having a new baby shortly. So Justin is now the proud father of a 3-month-old, and he's discovered that he might have been a little bit, let's say, optimistic about the amount of quality headphone time he would have. However, Justin does feel strongly that wireless really is worth it. It allows him to sort of like pace with the baby, or if he needs to like rock the baby back to sleep, he can do all that without wires, and it eliminates a tripping hazard, which he's noticed he's up late at night quite a lot of the times, and he just prefers not having that wire. So he highly recommends, this is Justin, recommends the RBH HP-1B headphones. They're affordable. They're like, you can find them for right around $100, and they support aptX with Bluetooth. However, he does agree that there's really not much importance in having aptX because, like, cranking the headphones so loud that you can't hear anything else, not a great idea with a baby around, and you're not doing, like, serious critical listening with these. So he doesn't agree with our suggestion from last week, which was to just plug it in with a wire. But he does think that if Rob M were to just get a Bluetooth transmitter, plug it into the headphone jack of his AV receiver when he wants to use it, that's like totally the way to go. Or if he wants headphones that do have aptX, he recommends those RBHs. So thank you, Justin.
I can get behind that recommendation. I've never heard those headphones, but that's why we didn't recommend, because we never heard them. But that sounds decent to me. I guess we have a couple of corrections, I think. Two. Do we have just two, or is it even more? Just two. Okay. So the first correction number 1, Nathan W says we missed the mark when describing the new HDR to SDR mode options that are part of the latest Oppo Ultra HD Blu-ray player beta firmware. Under the HDR settings sections, there are now 2 settings for off. One that limits everything to Rec. 709 color, and another that still uses the Rec. 2020 color space. The different modes and the luminance slider lets you tailor the tone mapping to your display and room conditions, so there's no loss of deep color, and only adds a lot more adjustment capability than what the Oppo players had before.
Yeah, so I was mistakenly saying last week that I thought that this being HDR to SDR conversion, that you would lose the deep color, that you would lose the expanded wide color gamut, and therefore I was saying maybe you still just want to use the strip metadata feature when you're putting this into projectors. But thank you to Nathan. I don't do beta firmwares. That's not my bag. So I haven't been able to play with this personally. So good to know that they've this is Oppo, so I should have expected that they would have thought about this, but they give you the option of when you turn the HDR off, meaning that, of course, it's now converting anything HDR to SDR, that you have the option to retain the Rec. 2020 color gamut. So that's good to know.
But it's still beta, right? So it's not out
It's
yet.
Still beta.
Okay, so we were right. It's coming. Right. Correction number 2, Chris and Brandon both wrote to inform us that both Yamaha and Denon receivers can, in fact, switch the HDMI input being used for the HDMI standby pass-through function without powering on the receiver. For the Yamahas, this is true going back as far as the 10 series, the X10 series, or whatever. For Denon, it started with the X300 series, so that's
yours would have it. Your X4300 would have it.
I would not use it for anything, so that's why I wouldn't know about that. You do need to activate this feature in the user menu, and you also need to press an input button on the remote. It isn't automatic input switching. But it is possible, though Dan from last week's Onkyo receiver cannot do it, so it would mean he needs to buy something new either way. So, all right. I did not know that. I didn't know it either. Switch. I never heard about that.
And I read manuals, and I completely
I want to be honest
that.
with you. I wouldn't have guessed it would have ever come, because I don't think that they would add a feature to something that like the vast majority of the people don't even know exists, nor would they need it if it did.
Well, I was thinking like, I mean, this is going way back before HDMI even existed. I've had receivers where if you press an input button, it automatically powers on the AV receiver and goes to that input. So you don't have to press power first and then the input. Just pressing one of the input buttons did that straight away.
Right.
So the Denons actually now, starting with when it was like the X3300, X4300, and then newer since then, they've given an option in the menu now to say, so they call it the RC select feature, which is the remote control select feature. So one of the options is that it's just off, so pressing the input button does nothing. Another one is that it's exactly what I just described. You push the input button and it turns on the AV receiver and goes to that input. Or the new one, which is this, is that it goes to that input even with the receiver in standby without turning it on. So that's the whole thing, to let you switch inputs even when it's in standby to use the HDMI.
I guess that'll work
standby
via Harmony
capacitor.
too, right? It should work during.
Yeah, because the Harmony will have the input buttons just like the original remote did. So Dan was looking for one that did automatic switching, so it's not quite that, but this is awfully close. However, there's no way to like make his Onkyo magically do it. So it was either he was going to have to get a new receiver, although that was one of Dan's questions last week. Are there any brands that do this? And we answered that incorrectly because we didn't know. So thank you to Chris and Brandon for informing us.
Let us know. Wow. It's an interesting week where we get 2 corrections in 1 week.
That's right.
It's all right. Jeb, we'll get to our new questions that we're going to mess up. Jeb would like a receiver that can power a 5.1.4 setup while also letting him connect another pair of speakers in zone 2. His max budget is $1,000. He's looked at accessories for less, but there are lots of choices, leaning towards Marantz because he likes the way they look. But all of the options are a bit overwhelming. Can we help him understand the feature differences for the options that are within his price range? Under $1,000? Shouldn't that 3300 should be able to do this, right?
Well, the 3300 tops out at 5.1.2.
Oh,
so it cannot do 5.1.4.
43 and whatever it is. It's a 60. Was it? Is it 11, 12, 13?
11. Yeah. So
11.
the lowest price Marantz and Denon sister models would be from, I guess it's a year and a half ago now, right?
Right.
So that'd be the X4300H in the Denon lineup or the SR6011 in the Marantz lineup. Those would be the least expensive that could do this. And so right now over at Accessories for Less, the X4300s, I think they've crept up to $900 now. They were down to $700 at one point, but I think they've crept up to $900 now. The SR6011, I just looked it up, is at $799, so it's at $800 right now.
Right.
Now, a couple of differences between those two models. The Marantz SR6011 doesn't have HEOS, but the 4300H does. The 4300H optionally can be upgraded to support Oro 3D. That's a $200 add-on. The SR6011 can't do that.
Some real important feature differences right here. I mean, you're talking make or break things right here. This man right now, he's probably looking at his phone as he's listening to this going, what is he talking about?
The SR6011 does have a 7.1 analog input. The X4300 doesn't. And then the one that bothers people a lot on the Marantz is the 6011 only has the little porthole display. It doesn't have a full display.
He likes the look.
On the front.
I like the look too. I'm with this dude. I'm with you.
And it's cheap.
I like the look. Yeah.
There are, of course, the slightly newer models. There's the SR6012.
Right.
The 6012 does have HEOS. Still can't do Oro, though. And then there's the X4400H, which actually just dropped down in price. It's now down at $900, just like the 4300. So there's not much reason to get the 4300 because there's the 4400, which is newer, and it's at the same price point right now. All the same features there. So those are all the ones that are below $1,000. Then you're up to the 6300, 6400. Those get over $1,000. Or in Marantz's lineup, the 7011 and 7012, which are over $1,000. So you're looking at the 43 or 44 from Denon and the 6011 or the 6012 from Marantz.
And he asked, would he still need a separate stereo amp for his Zone 2? So he wants to do 5.2.4, right? So that's 9.
That's 9 amps.
They'll do 11 speakers, but you would need a second.
Yeah, it can process 11 speakers in the main zone, but you'd need to add a 2-channel amp just to the main zone if you wanted to do that, to do 7.1.4. And then for Zone 2, you'd need to have a separate 2-channel amp for that. Or if you got the Denon or the newer Marantz, the 6012, you could do it via HEOS, the wireless whole house system. That could be your Zone 2 if you want to get a HEOS speaker.
I don't know why you would want to do that, but okay. Did you read the thing about the HomePod? Like, I've read such conflicting reviews about this thing, about how it sounds like garbage, and another person says it sounds better than their $1,000 KEF studio speakers or whatever. Can we not?
Why would you get a HomePod? Why would you do that?
I have no idea.
It doesn't do that. Oh, I loved how when they were talking about how it will eventually do stereo, because it doesn't right now.
Yeah, right.
You can't buy two of them and have them as a stereo pair right now, but they will. Apple talked about that like they invented stereo.
Well, they
were the first people to ever do it.
Ever since Steve Jobs died, I hate to say it, but the company has released it like, we have enhanced VR mode now on our phones. I'm like, yeah, so has like everybody for like the last 5 years. What was the other thing they invented that drove me absolutely nuts? But facial recognition, like, we can recognize your face. Like, dude, my Samsung Galaxy Nexus, the very first Nexus phone that came out, could do that. It didn't do it very well, but it did it. So what do you think you invented here? But okay, my wife was like, I'm super angry about that commercial that has been going around for Apple, where they show the little girl or whatever she is running around with her iPad, taking pictures and stuff like that. And at the very end of the commercial, she's sitting in her front yard, lying in the grass and typing on her, the little keyboard thing. And her neighbor says, "What you doing on your computer?" And she looks around like, "So what's a computer?" I just was like, what do you mean, what's a computer? I mean, if that was a real person, the very next question should have been something along the lines of, how many fingers am I holding up? Are you having a stroke? Is something deathly wrong with you? I'm calling the police right now. We're going to get the fire department, the ambulance, everybody. How do you not know what a computer is? You're literally on it right now. That stupid commercial makes me so angry, but whatever. Hey, at least I remember, I guess.
Okay.
All right. Justin, not Bieber, on Facebook. I was really angry about that commercial. You don't understand. Every time that commercial comes on, and it's on.
I'm not quite sure how we even got onto that. But
Hulu it's the same commercials over and over again. I've seen the commercial like 30 times, and every time I'm just like, what is wrong with this? Who said this was okay? It's so dumb. How do you not know what a computer is? I mean, you live in 2017 or 18 or 19, any year. Computer. It's right there in your hand. Jeez. Justin, not Bieber, on Facebook. All right. Justin has a Harmony Hub, and he uses both a Harmony keyboard, mostly for his HTPC, and the Harmony Smart Control Remote. On the keyboard, there's a trackpad to control the mouse. The mouse has started acting up, the pointer moving on its own, not responding accurately to his finger, blah, blah, blah. Resetting the computer seems to get it working again for a little while, and moving the USB adapter to a different port seemed to get it working better. But he's still unclear why it started happening in the first place. Any ideas? Dust or water would be my first thing. That every time my trackpad goes crazy, it's because there's a little bit of dust on it, and also how I hold my hand. Occasionally, like I'll think I'm clearing it, but I'll just barely have a little bit on the edge there, and it kind of messes everything up. But usually, some sort of just a little bit of moisture is all it takes to really get those things going nuts.
I have one of these Harmony keyboards, and anytime the trackpad started acting up on me, it's because my batteries were getting weak.
Yeah, there you go. That would make sense too.
Refreshed batteries, and that's taking care of it every time. In his case, I don't know. It could easily just be batteries, or sounds like maybe he had a little bit of interference. If just toggling the ports, doing a reset or whatever, that just sounds like signal interference, which I'm not totally. Other than getting closer or getting a better line of sight to the receiver that you're plugging into the USB port, I'm not sure what else you can really
I have
do.
a real nice Harmony mouse, that's wireless, and it has never worked very well. I don't know why. I've got another one at work, works great, no problems. The one at home, I actually took a USB extender cable so that the little Bluetooth or whatever it is adapter is inches from it. At this point, I might as well plug it in.
Yeah,
and it still doesn't recognize it. I'm like, I am completely defeating the purpose of being wireless. I will say I am using the new AVRant mouse pad
nice.
At home. Not the risers. Those
the real mouse pad, the cheap one.
The real mouse pad, yeah. With this smart control remote, sometimes a command seems to get stuck on repeat. For example, he'll push the volume button up once, but then the volume keeps going up to maximum, or he'll press the direction key and the cursor will just keep scrolling that direction. He's tried adjusting the delays in the Harmony software, and he's turned off the repeater function on all of his devices, but it keeps happening, and he thoughts. That definitely sounds like a battery. That's the sort of stuff
it was the exact same suspects. It was battery or signal interference somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds like a battery to me too. I mean, that's what's usually what happens. I mean, do you not charge? Do you know my Harmony remote? Like my parents are like, our Harmony remote dies really fast. Every couple of days we have to charge it. I'm like, first of all, you only have to charge it every couple of days. I don't understand how this is a problem. Why would you need to charge it more than that?
Comes with a cradle.
My charging time for my Harmony remote is during this podcast. I specifically hunt down the remote, put it on the charging thing for the 2 hours that I do this podcast, and then that's it. That's when I charge it. I charge it once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. So there is variance within these devices. It could be that you've got a couple of units that are just going bad after some time.
Well, the smart control is like what they're calling the companion now. So that one isn't rechargeable, and it actually uses the button cell batteries. It's not even like regular AA's or AAA's or anything. It's the flat little button cell.
Yeah, the ones you put in your like garage door opener and stuff.
So it is a little bit more of a pain, and you probably don't just have a stack of them on hand, because most of us don't.
Right.
But yeah, honestly, these sound like weak battery and or just signal interference issues where I don't know if your Harmony hub is like in a cabinet behind a door, and maybe that door has a little bit of metal in it, or maybe you just have your cell phone in your pocket really close to your remote when these issues happen. Like, it's some kind of either signal interference or just a weak battery. I mean, I might be completely wrong about that, but those are the suspect thoughts that I have.
Yeah, I hate to say it, it's weird, but it's often the Occam's razor thing, where it's the easiest solution. It happened twice to me this week. My parents were like, the YouTube app won't update on your brother. I remember my brother's autistic, so having the YouTube app not update was like 24 hours of absolute hell at my parents' house, and they were like, it won't update. What do we do? I'm like, go into the iTunes store or whatever, it's the app store, and do it from there. They're like, it won't do it. I'm like, delete it and reinstall. They're like, oh yeah, that worked. Okay. Now I had a friend that was over his house, and he was using his She Who Shall Not Be Named to stream Pandora to a speaker that I gave him, and that it was cutting in and out. He goes, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, unplug the She Who Should Not Be Named and plug it back in. See what happens. Reconnected. No problem since. I think that's what's happening here. I think it's just probably low batteries on both cases. So we'll see. We'll see what he says. We could be wrong. Ted tried all of our ideas for trying to improve the imaging. You know what? I absolutely believe he did. Some people I don't believe. Ted, I believe. Trying to improve the imaging from his wall-mounted legacy audio speakers he held in the acoustic panel above his head to reduce any ceiling bounce. Big thanks to his wife for helping hold the panel. He made the things our poor wives have to go through. Like, you should have had one of your kids take a picture of that, just so that later on your wife could hold it over you. It's like, Daddy's listening to, got the music real loud. Your wife's like holding the panel with one hand, covering her ears with the other. Okay. He made sure that Odyssey was turned off for all of his comparisons. He powered off his subwoofers so that only the speakers were playing. He tried sitting at different heights at his primary listening position. He tried putting an acoustic panel directly behind his head. Out of all of that, putting the panel directly behind his head is the only one that made a clear difference, but he didn't like it. It didn't really improve the imaging at all. It just made it all of the sound deader, I guess, made it all sound deader overall. He recently listened to some store demos, and one of the better ones took place in a fairly large dedicated listening room using B&W's 802 Diamond speakers and Macintosh electronics. That produced the sort of holographic imaging he's trying to achieve, but what's driving him crazy is that he gets that sort of imaging when he moves to his rear seats. Dude, the solution is to sit in the rear seats. But his front seats, the sounds do not disconnect from the speakers and seemingly float in the air the way they do when he's in his rear seats or in that store demo. He keeps coming back to the listening angles and aiming. However, he did already try temporarily moving the speakers closer together. Normally they're plus or minus 24 degrees to the left and right center if he's in the back row, and they're at 30 degrees when he's in the front row. Moving the speakers so that they were 24 degrees from his front row, he didn't improve anything. And when he left the speakers physically closer together, but he moved himself forward to create the 30-degree spread again, the imaging improved. He's never tried angles wider than 30 degrees for any of the seating positions. But other than that, is there anything left to try? So, wall-mounted speakers, dude. This is like this is the crux of it. Whenever somebody comes and they're like, I want to have wall-mounted or in-wall speakers. I mean, I this is what I fear. We're gonna give you good advice, and you're gonna end up with something that you're like, it doesn't sound right. Yeah, it's wall-mounted speakers, man. I mean, they're hard to mount and everything else. It sounds to me like he needs to angle them a little bit. He needs to be able to toe them in a little bit.
Because the normal thing you would do if these weren't wall-mounted, or, for other people it might be in-wall, but something that you can't adjust once it's like, up there. The normal advice is to play with the toe in and possibly even adjust the overall height of the speaker.
Right, physical distance, or the physical distance from the front wall too. You could pull them out, push them in.
That's right.
There's all sorts of things you can do that you cannot do in this situation.
Yeah.
One more thing I want him to try. I want him to take a panel and put it just inside both the speakers, like right next to the speakers.
Okay.
So that the cross interference there, the sound that's coming directly angling out there, block that. I don't know that that's going to make that much of a difference, but if there's some sort of weird comb filtering thing going on at his one seat, might make a difference there. It's clearly not a solution, but it would maybe be explanatory as far as what we're hearing.
Yeah, because he did try something very similar to that by putting up that duvet in between his speakers.
Yeah, but I'm actually talking like two whole feet.
Actual.
Yeah, 2 whole feet out from the wall, so that he's blocking quite a bit of it. That first all the stuff that's going towards the inside of the room. That being said, I think the real solution here is unfortunately to angle them in some way, or to really change the location of them dramatically.
Yeah, because that's what I'd be doing if they weren't attached to the wall. That's
I don't know.
What I'd be doing.
I don't know what else to do. I mean, because that is the solution. The solution is it is now time to start playing with placement. But you can't play with placement on on-wall speakers, and you can't change toe in on on-wall speakers either.
Well, I guess theoretically you could build a wedge that attached to the wall, but you'd have to figure out the precise angle before you go and do that.
I know that it just becomes another whole nightmare. So
it is a nightmare. It's especially when they're this big and heavy.
I know.
If they were easy little ones to if they were Kef T series or something, you're not really so worried.
Can we just sit in the back row? Can we just now sit in the back row? If it sounds good in the back row, really every other solution is going to be costly and time consuming. And I know you don't mind but you don't mind spending the time, but I really think that the solution at this point is to sit in the back row. And if you're like, I don't want to sit in the back row because I want the image size that I want, get a bigger TV. I guarantee you the bigger TV will look bigger. It will be the right size.
Is it time for him to consider what he mentioned last week, which is that right now he's got the room set up so that it's wider than it is long? Is it time to rotate at 90 degrees so that he can end up with his primary seat approximately the same distance as where his current rear row is at? Because then his room would be longer. Once you turn it,
there's no guarantee that he's not going to that the problem's not going to be the same. Clearly there's something bouncing around this room in some sort of weird way that's making this happen.
Just in the perfectly wrong spot.
By turning yourself, you have now changed everything about how the sound bounces across the room. To then assume that the distances are going to be somehow magically changed is not. Sit in the back row. Please sit in the back row. Please sit in the back row. I am begging you. You know what? Who else is probably begging you? Your wife. We're in conjunction here. She's just saying sit in the back row. And you're like, well, the best place they should. I'm telling you, sit in the back row too. I'm with your wife on this one.
The assumed opinion of Ted's wife.
I assume that she is a rational human being, and all of us are saying sit in the back row. Because
my absolute last grasp, even concept of what might be going on here that could be different from what we've already said, is that it is actually some sort of summing problem where you need to be a greater distance away for all of this. And the reason why moving forward actually, because he said when he moved forward, the imaging was better than when he's in his front row, but not as good as when he's in his back row. I was like, well, at that point, you've separated the drivers so much by being that close that you're really almost hearing them individually, which allows you to better image, solely the tweeters separate from the midwoofers. I mean, that's my last grasp, even concept of what it could be, but it's still not a solution. The only solution is to move farther away.
Right. Which is the back row.
In your back row.
So sit there. That's what I said.
Sorry, Ted.
Sorry, Ted. The next solution is to get new speakers. So I don't think you want to hear that one. Get speakers that aren't connected to your wall. Charleston, not the place or the candy bar, just Charleston. Charleston just upgraded to a Denon AVR-X4300H receiver. He won an Atmos and Odyssey Multi-Q X-T32. He set the listening mode to auto, which works perfectly for Atmos and DTS X content, but anything else, it always displays the listening mode as, say, DD plus D surround or DTS plus neural X or something else, but always with a plus in there. To his understanding, the plus whatever means upmixing is being applied, correct?
Correct.
You
are right.
Is the first thing tells you what the source was, and the second thing tells you what your receiver is using to make it use all of your speakers.
That's right.
So maybe stereo, and then it's B plus DTS, whatever, or Dolby Surround up mixer or whatever. So yes, that's everything's working as advertised. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Is he crazy for not wanting upmixing automatically applied to everything? If the source is a regular Blu-ray and it's 7.1 DTS HD master audio, he'd prefer to just hear straight 7.1, not something upmixed to put sound in the overhead speakers that was never part of the original mix. Yeah, you're crazy, dude. No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
I got no problems with that whatsoever. And there should be a setting in there that allows you to do that. You don't have to upmix. I gotta believe, right? We don't have to turn on the upmixer, do we?
No, you definitely don't have to turn on the upmixer. The issue is if he wants it to all just happen automatically. Because unfortunately, what you really want, Yamaha does actually offer an automatic mode that they call straight.
Right.
Which is precisely what he's asking for, but Denon doesn't have the equivalent. Denon does have their direct mode, but if you use that, it turns off Odyssey. So
you don't want that.
I don't think that's what you want. I mean, it would do what you're asking in terms of the listening mode, but it turns off your... you can't even do like a manual equalizer with the direct mode on, so that isn't what you want. So what you can do here is simply... So to activate the auto mode, there are 4 listening mode buttons on the Denon remote. There's movie, music, game, and pure. And you actually have to press the pure button because the pure button goes direct, pure direct, and then auto, which is not necessarily what you would intuit, but that is the way the pure button listening mode button works. It toggles through direct, pure direct, and auto. So if you just use, say, the movie button, it'll just toggle through all of the available movie listening modes, one of which will be, if what you're getting from the disc is 7.1 DTS HD master audio, that'll be one of the modes. The very next one will probably be DTS HD master audio plus Neural X. And another one will be DTS HD master audio plus Dolby Surround up mixer. Those will all be there and you'll toggle through them. But one of them will just be the straight 7.1 DTS HD master audio, or let's say you're watching your cable box and what's coming in is 5.1 Dolby Digital, that'll be one of the available options, but you'll have to manually toggle through until you find it. So it's not automatic, but it is there.
So he asks, he does want to use upmixing sometimes, often with streaming services, for example. Is there some way to tell the receiver to leave certain sources alone while applying upmixing to other sources? Usually with your receiver, it'll remember what your last listening mode was.
That's right. And it does remember that input by input.
Yes, input by input. So as you switch inputs, if you're using whatever it is, a Roku or something like that, it should remember what the last listening mode you used on that input. That being said, it's not impossible for it to switch out if you go from it there being a Dolby Digital stream to being a different stream. So if it switches there, it could switch into a different listening mode because it's using a different decoder to do it, and then you're back to upmixing again. So you're going to have to maybe check it every once in a while, make sure it's doing what
Yeah.
you're supposed to be doing. I mean, that would be...
You can do what you want to do. It's just it's going to be manual, Charleston.
Yeah.
That's the caveat there. So it's a bit of a hassle. It means you might be reaching for the remote more often than you ideally wanted to. But yeah, at least you can do what you want to do. You'll just have to manually toggle through the available listening modes, and that's how you do it.
All right. Infinite Gary. Gary is curious about two different bookshelf speakers, the Revel Performa Beryllium concept. Is that still part of it? M126BE, is that the thing? Okay, anyways.
Yep,
and
yeah, that's the model number. Yeah.
All right, M126BE, which sounds like a gun. And the Elac Adante AS-61. Really? That seems like there's going to be quite a difference in price between the Beryllium tweeters and the non-Beryllium. Anyways,
well,
okay.
the Adantes are $2,500 a pair. So
I've seen these. I'm going to click on these. Hold on a second. Clicking, and now clicking.
Yeah,
back.
so Elac Adante is Andrew Jones's third series of speakers that he made for Elac. So he did the debut series, which were, affordable, and then he did the Unify series, which were like mid-range, and then he jumped up quite a bit in price when he went to the Adante series. So those are his newest ones and most expensive at Elac.
Oh, okay. Kind of look like big black boxes. All right. The Revel is a traditional two-way bookshelf speaker design using the existing Performa 3 Series cabinet, but with all new drivers and new crossover. As the name implies, the tweeter is now a Beryllium dome, similar to the tweeter used in their flagship Ultima 2, which is a really good game, I understand, series. And they're using a new waveguide to control the dispersion of that tweeter. The Elac Adante is a bit more unusual since it's an Andrew Jones design. There's a concentric soft dome tweeter in the middle of an aluminum mid-range driver. The whole assembly is in a sealed off portion of the cabinet. It's not unusual for a tower speaker to be that way, or even a mid-range, even a bookshelf. From the outside, the speaker looks like a sealed design with an 8-inch woofer, but that is actually a passive radiator. The real woofer is mounted inside the cabinet. Andrew Jones' explanation for this design is that no matter what traditional woofer design you use, sealed, ported, or coupled to a passive radiator, the woofer itself is going to produce some amount of distortion. It might be harmonic, it might be port noise, it might be mechanical noise, but it will do something that cannot be eliminated by only filtering the input signal in some way. So he claims that having one powered woofer inside of the cabinet and then having a passive radiator be the only part that actually interacts with the outside air creates, in essence, a mechanical filter that will allow the fundamental sounds of the powered woofer through, but will damp the much weaker harmonic and noise elements from the sound. So Gary puts his question to us this way: if we won a contest and we had the choice between the Revel or the Elac speakers as a prize, which one would we choose? And more importantly, can we describe our thinking process to make this decision? I would go with Revels, because that what Andrew Jones says sounds like BS to me. I'm gonna be honest with you. That sounds like absolute, like he just made those words up. Okay. So distortion in the driver, when it comes down to it, is basically the driver deforming because it's unable to hold its shape as it is going in and out. Yeah. So whether or not what is making it go in and out is the changing of electrical polarity between the pole piece and everything else, that or another driver behind it physically pushing the air on it, which is what is happening here. If it deforms, it deforms. If it, I can see no real reason why this would make harmonic distortions and other things less prevalent. I mean, it could be, but
I mean, if there's some stiffness to the suspension of the passive radiator, it's just going to, just sheer inertia is going to prevent it from, it's going to damp things a little bit. So if what you have is one very strong, loud tone and then a much, much weaker harmonic, it's going to damp both. But I guess he's saying if it's gonna
distort because the air on the back side of it is pushing so hard that it causes it to distort, it's gonna distort, and it's gonna have its own harmonic resonance as well. So
yeah, you'd think.
I mean, how does that make it any different? Okay, so maybe the harmonic resonances that are coming off of the sounds that are coming off of the original driver aren't being transferred through the first driver. But if the two, let's just say the two driver materials are absolutely identical.
Okay.
All right. The air that's pushing on the back of that is being pushed by the other driver, right? Yeah. Which means that it's being pushed just as hard because it's a sealed design. There's air in there and it's being pushed, going back and forth. I mean, if it is somehow weaker on that driver, you then have to turn it up so that the driver on the inside is distorting a little bit more than it would normally do in order to push enough air on this thing so they can get to the right volume. But when it gets to the right volume, it's going to start distorting the way the first driver did at the initial volume. I can't see how that's not the case.
Well, they are two different diameters. I mean, the actual powered one is a 6.5-inch diameter, and the passive radiator is an 8-inch.
It's gonna have. Oh, I said let's pretend they're both the same.
Right.
Now that we know they're not, that's still gonna have that first one's gonna still have to push enough air to make that driver be as loud as it's supposed to be. As soon as it gets to that loudness, if there's gonna be distortion at that driver's size and materials, there's gonna be distortion. I don't care what's pushing it. So. Yeah, anytime somebody tries to sell me a speaker or sell me a piece of equipment with a marketing claim that sounds as dubious as this one does, and like I said, it may be true, but you're going to have to really explain it to me with the math or something because I'm not getting it, and I've been doing this long enough where my nose for BS is pretty well defined.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, all you're really doing is turning down the volume a little bit.
Which you have to turn back up if you want the speaker to be as loud as it's supposed to be. I just don't see it. I don't see it. And plus, I mean, a Beryllium tweeter would be pretty nice, dude. I mean, those things are supposed to be awesome. So, and those Revels got a good rep as well.
Yeah, my answer was, I in Gary's scenario, won a contest. These are the two options for the prize. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick the Revel because I'm much more familiar with it. I know what Revel speakers sound like, and I have exceedingly little doubt that the Performa Beryllium series is going to kind of fall between the Performa 3 and the Ultima 2 because they haven't changed the way that they design the output of their speakers in many years, and there's nothing about these that suggests they have here. So yeah, it's got a design and technology that I'm already very familiar with and like a lot, plus just the sheer size. I mean, those Adante bookshelf speakers, they're huge. Those are big monitor. That's an 8-inch, passive radio, but it's essentially an 8-inch woofer with what looks like at least an 1.5 inches on either side to it. That's a big box. Whereas the Revel is a much more, traditional two-way bookshelf speaker. So, I mean, you just wanted our thought process. Why would we choose one or the other? I mean, if I had the opportunity to audition both, I'm not going to turn the Adante away out of hand. I'm like, I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was only allowed to pick one, I'll go with the Revel for familiarity and size.
Sight unheard, I would I would be in the same boat. I mean,
yeah, but that's I'm not saying anything against the Adante. I haven't heard the darn thing, so who knows?
It very well may be an awesome sounding speaker, and there's been plenty of products that I have liked, not liked the marketing of.
Yeah,
because
the people who make all the bass stuff anyway. I mean, but the meat of the thing is in that mid range and tweeter, and that's your classic concentric design that's sealed off from the rest of the speaker, so that's probably going to sound fine. Worst comes to worst, I choose a higher crossover frequency to my subs because I'm still going to use subs, and it probably takes care of whatever weird stuff is going on in the bass.
Speaking of subs, did you see the article it came across my Google News feed when I was sitting waiting for something to happen with my kids, and it was a Steve Gutenberg article about the case for never using subs with music again. I was
sure. That sounds like Steve.
That you are a very crazy person, sir. You are a crazy person. You've been around a long time. A lot of people respect you. I've got no problems with that, but clearly you have drunk the Kool-Aid in the biggest and worst of ways. Cesar. Somebody's going to send him a clip of that, and I'm going to get in real trouble, but I'm sorry. I mean,
Steve couldn't care less. He knows he's nuts.
Yeah. Cesar is building his home theater. He wants to run the speaker wires before the drywall goes up and needs advice on best speaker layout and seat placement. His room is 23 by 11, so 23 with the first 11 feet being 8.5 feet wide and the rest 10.5 feet wide, with 6.5 foot ceilings throughout.
Yeah.
Was that a Hobbit cave?
I hope that's actually 6'8", because otherwise that's not up to code.
Well, who knows where he lives? I mean, he could live someplace where they don't care. It's 6.5 feet is real short.
It is real short.
I mean, I'm 5'7", so I don't care. But there's a lot of people I know who would be very irritated by that. The display will need to go on the 8.5 foot wall, as the 10.5-foot wall already has the door to the garage on it. He's thinking either a 5.2.2 or a 7.2.2 system, whichever we think is better for the room. Only one row of seats. What do we advise? Okay, it's 23 feet long, with the first 11 feet being 8.5 wide, and he's going to be sitting facing that side. Not 7.2.2. I mean, I with one row with one.
If you were topping out at 9 speakers, I would go 5.2.4.
Yeah, I would.
That's what I would do with 9 speakers.
Yeah, I don't know that I would do the 7 because they're going to be kind of far back there.
They're going to be kind of. I mean, honestly, in this room, you have the room behind you. No matter what, that I would go 7.2.4 if that's an option. Now, if you want to get a slightly less expensive Avery receiver that only has 9 amps built in, and you don't want to buy an amplifier right away, I've got zero beef with starting at 5.2.4. Maybe you just never upgrade it, or if you ever want to, you could add the extra 2 amplifier channels and expand to 7.2.4, but I would start with 5.2.4 in here, since clearly 9 speakers is an option to him. That's what I would do, because that way you get
that's what he's
the
saying,
overhead panning.
I would go 4 overhead no matter what.
Yeah.
I would go 4 overhead no matter what, and I would probably not ever worry about having the surround backs. But you may want to.
Talking about running wires while the drywall is down, I would wire for 7.2.4.
And I mean, honestly, the Dolby recommended angles kind of tell you where you're going to be. So what we don't really need to tell you exactly where in the room to put them. What we do need to do is tell you where to put your seat.
Yeah,
so your
and then everything goes from the seat.
Everything goes from the seat. So your seat is your room is 23 feet long. You want to sit a little bit past half of it away, or a little bit before half of it away. So this is what you have to decide. If you want to sit closer to the screen so that it's a bigger screen, you only have one row of seats, then you would sit a little bit ahead of that halfway mark, and the halfway mark in 23-foot room is 11 and a half, right? Is that right? 11 and a half feet. So you want to sit maybe 10 feet away from the front wall, or somewhere around 13, 14 feet from the back, from the front wall?
13, 14 feet, yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was thinking, so I don't have a diagram or a picture of this, but I'm assuming that it's like, you come in from the garage at the back of the room, and at that point at the back of the room, it's 10.5 feet wide. And I'm assuming you go forward for, what would it be, 12 feet. And then there's like a wall that cuts in and then goes forward so that the remainder of the front is 8.5 feet wide. I'm assuming that's what this is, and that it's not like tucked in at both sides or something.
Right. I thought the same thing. It's got to be that way.
Yeah. I mean, I might be wrong, but that's my assumption. Now, if that's the case, what I'm thinking is, so he has to have his screen on the 8.5 foot wide wall, which means that everything would be shifted over to the left or the right, depending on how the wall cuts in, right? Mm-hmm. So what I would actually do, since he wants one row of seats, is 8.5 feet. I don't know how you're going to fit, like, let's say 3 seats, even a 3-seater couch. I don't know how you're going to fit that in there and still have a walkway. But what you could do quite easily is, let's say you get 3 home theater recliners, with the one arm in between each of them, or a love seat plus one other recliner, or just a couch or whatever. But you actually have that more or less up against the wall so that your seats are centered on that 8.5 foot wall. That essentially leaves your walkway on the one side, right? Okay. So if you have your seats far enough back that your seats are within the 10.5 foot wide area, but they're pushed over to the side so that they're centered on the 8.5 foot wall in front of you, now you have a walkway on your side to actually make use of that row of seats.
That would mean... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that would mean I would have you probably 13 feet in terms of eyes to that front wall. Now, that's going to demand having a large screen, which physically isn't going to fit when the whole wall is only 8.5 feet wide. What would fit in there, like literally taking up that whole 8.5 foot wall, would be a 110-inch diagonal screen. That would cover the whole wall.
Which, this is a perfect example of the ideal situation for a false wall.
False wall, yes.
Yeah, that way you can move this entire screen forward until you get it to where you like it, and then build a wall around it and have it be acoustically transparent. Just fixed
Acoustically
frame.
transparent.
And you put all your speakers behind there, then no one cares what the speakers look like.
That's right.
So,
I like that. I mean, that is 100% what I would recommend, because now, okay, you can have a nice, comfortable 3-row seats, or if you did like a 4-seater couch with no arms in between, even that could probably squish in if the seats aren't too wide. But you've left yourself a walkway on one side, the seats pushed over to the side wall. Then, yeah, I would go for either somewhere between a 100 and a 110 inch acoustically transparent screen on a false wall, and that way, I don't know, my preference if it were 110 inches would be to sit probably about 11 feet away from it. That'd be my personal preference. 10 to 11 feet away from a 110 inch screen looks really nice and cinematic. So given that you're going to be 13 feet away from the physical front wall, you could have a 2 or 3 foot false wall, which is perfect. For putting your speakers behind.
Yeah.
Acoustically transparent. All 3 of your front speakers are behind that acoustically transparent screen. Bingo bango. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, I agree. What gauge of wire should you use, and where should you buy it? You can buy. There's a lot of places you can buy it. 12 gauge will be fine. 12 gauge.
14 gauge would be fine.
A lot of people out there are like, "Oh, you use 10 gauge wire because of whatever." No, unless you're going to leave spools of it between your speaker and your receiver, you're not going to worry about it.
12 or 14.
12, 14, 12 or 14 is fine. Yeah. Sometimes for flexibility's sake, you can get the 14-4 wire, which will have 4 wires in it. And then you can take 2 of the wires and put them together for the red, and 2 of the wires and put them together and that makes them effectively the 11 gauge wire. It's just a little bit more flexible. Yeah, you can buy it from Monoprice. You can buy them from Amazon. You can buy them from...
my personal favorite is Parts Express.
Yeah.
Because they sell the Belden wire. And I trust Belden implicitly when it comes to anything wire. And it's not crazy expensive or anything. So they sell the totally in-wall rated Belden brand cable. They sell that at Parts Express. That's my personal choice, but there's nothing wrong with the in-wall rated stuff from Monoprice, or make sure it's in-wall rated if you're getting it from Amazon. Any of those 3 places. You won't be overspending. It'll be great stuff.
Yeah. Luke on Twitter. Let's say someone is interested in Rob's crazy 2 receiver solution for getting 9.1.6 Atmos while still being able to use front wide speakers for upmixing. Rob said you need to use one of the older receiver models that still have front wide. So which models would be the ones to look for, and are any of them still available for under $1,000? I mean, if they're available, they are almost certainly under $1,000 because they are used. What about the 4000? The Denon 4000, didn't that do wides?
So the 4000 did wides, but it didn't do Atmos, and it doesn't have HDCP 2.2, so it could start causing video problems if you have a 4K HDR setup.
Right, sure, okay, all right.
So there's an extra little wrinkle to this. If you want what I was talking about, which is fully discrete 9.1.6 for when there are actual Atmos soundtracks that could put discrete sounds in a full 9.1.6 speaker configuration, if that's what you want, you actually need one of the older ones that could process 11 speakers. And the reason for that is because if you want it all to be discrete, you can't have any sounds so what was supposed to be playing in the front wides, you can't have that sound also playing out of the fronts or out of the surrounds because it's supposed to be discrete in the front wide. Right. What's supposed to be in the surround backs, you can't have that also playing in the surrounds. It's supposed to be discrete to the surround backs. And all the sounds that would be in any of the overhead speakers, those can't be playing in any of the floor level speakers because they're supposed to be discrete and pulled out of the floor level and put into the overhead level. So if that's what you want, is the fully discrete setup I was talking about, you need one of the older ones that could be configured as 9.1.2. Because the older ones topped out 11 speakers, but you need that 9.1.2 so that all the overhead information is pulled out of the floor layer and you get the fully discrete sound. And if you tried to do that with one of the ones that topped out at 9, the best you could do would be 7.1.2 with the 7 being front wides instead of surround backs, and now the surround back information just got mixed into the surround channels, which isn't the scenario I was talking about. So the models you would look for would be Denon's X7200WA. You can still find those, but they're like $1,500 usually. Doesn't fit the $1,000 thing. There were the pre-pros from Marantz that could do this. There was the AV8802A, which I haven't seen for like under $1,700 or $1,800. And there was the AV7702 Mark II. And it was important that it was the Mark II, otherwise you didn't get any of the 4K HDCP 2.2 stuff. So the AV7702 Mark II. Haven't seen those in a while. So back to receiver land, there was the Denon X6200W, and I have seen those floating around, including at Accessories for Less, for right around $1,000. Usually it'll say last one or like almost sold out because they don't have very many of them. But I've seen the odd one, the X6200W, and there, in the Marantz lineup there was the SR7010 that could do that, and I've seen one or two of those on Amazon selling for right around $1,000.
Okay.
So you're going to be right up against that $1,000 budget, but honestly, it's probably the X6200W or the Marantz SR7010. Those are your likely candidates to do what I was talking about, fully discrete, and then you'd be combining it with the brand new X8500H, so you can have your 6 overheads. Crazy town.
Don't do it. Don't
do
it.
That was
just wait a year, and you know what? It'll
Clint's
do it for you.
Thing. Yeah. Well, hey, if Emotiva's fabled RMC1 ever comes out, it's totally never going to come. But if it ever comes
you're
out,
patient enough to wait for
$5,000,
Emotiva. You're
it'll do
patient enough to
$9.06.
wait for everybody else. So yeah. Mike has a Vizio SB3651-E6. Comes off the tongue there. Soundbar connected to his TCL 43S405 TV in his bedroom. He's using ARC, or audio return channel, as well as the SoundBars HDMI input to connect to his LG Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Since the bedroom setup, he wants dynamic compression, and right now he's finding the louds too loud and the softs too soft. He tried activating the soundbar's true volume setting, but to his ears it only seems to limit peaks rather than dynamically compressing the entire signal. He's also tried activating the soundbar's night mode, but all that did was turn down the subwoofer. He adjusted the available EQ and settled on direct, and he's bumped up the center channel level and lowered the surrounds, but he can't think of anything else to adjust. With his Denon receiver in his main setup, simply turning on Odyssey dynamic volume to its lowest setting was enough. So do we have any tips or strategies for him to try with his Vizio soundbar setup? No. I mean, honestly, there's it sounds to me like you've done a fantastic job of trying to curate that sound yourself. Clearly, what they have is on the soundbar is not something that's working for you. I understand exactly what you want. I've experienced the same thing where you want to be able to turn your TV on, and I am absolutely guilty of this. I do not mind having a TV or something playing in the background as I'm falling asleep, and I don't care if it plays through the night. I do care that a loud sound wakes me up, and it happens all the time. So I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I know that Odyssey's dynamic volume made a huge difference when I was using it, the times that I've used it. That being said, if that doesn't have it, it'd be very hard for you to find an EQ setting that would be universal enough, because what this isn't is it's not like there are certain frequencies that are bothering you.
Right.
It's the volume of those frequencies that's bothering you. So the solution is really to get a device that actually does what you want it to do, and clearly this soundbar is not yet.
I mean, a little bit I have to say, Mike, because my parents have a Vizio soundbar, and I'm a little bit surprised that the true volume didn't do it for you, because I was pretty impressed by how it evened things out. However, it does still allow some dynamics. It doesn't remove all dynamics. So
he said the lowest setting for EQ for Odyssey volume did it for him. The lowest setting I take to mean the least amount of dynamic range.
He said it to light. which is,
Yeah.
it's dynamically compressing it some, but not totally.
It wasn't like he was looking for the highest level where it's
That's
like one volume the whole way.
Which is why I say I'm a little bit surprised that true volume didn't do it for you, because I was fairly impressed by it. It definitely bumped up the quieter parts and prevented the really loud explosions from blasting your head off. So I found the true volume fairly effective. But if that's not enough, he's absolutely right. For whatever reason, the night mode on the Vizio SoundBars isn't like a lot of other night modes where it really does just crunch everything down to the with everything's within like 3 decibels. It doesn't do that. It really pretty much does just turn off the subwoofer is what it does. That's what night mode does. So he's right about that. Honestly, there's nothing further within the Vizio soundbar itself I'm aware of to help you further in this. The true volume is really the feature that's supposed to do this for you, and it's just not doing it enough. I will say LG's Ultra HD Blu-ray player does have its own dynamic range control setting that you can turn on to limit the dynamic range, but it only applies to Dolby signals. It won't apply to DTS signals if that happens to be a disc that has DTS. And if you're playing back regular Blu-rays as well as Ultra HD Blu-rays, that's going to be a lot of them use a DTS signal instead of a Dolby signal. So that player won't do it for you. Plus, it's not going to help if what you were doing was, your TV's tuner or its Netflix app or something like that. And I glanced through that TCL's manual, and there doesn't appear to be anything via the audio return channel or its optical connection that has to do with dynamic range, limiting. It doesn't do that. It has something like that for its own built-in speakers.
Right.
But not for its digital output of the audio. I don't have a solution with your existing equipment that I think is really going to solve this for you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so I think what he really wants is Odyssey. And that I can understand.
Or something that had Dolby volume, which is hard to find, but a few products have that, which was very similar. It's very similar to what dynamic volume does. Also, like just on Yamaha's receivers, just their night mode does what he's asking for. Their version of night mode just shrinks everything to a very tiny
what he probably doesn't want to do for his bedroom setup is get a receiver.
Get a receiver and separate speakers, I know.
Well, he could use the soundbar. Just puts the soundbar
a stereo,
between the speaker, the receiver between the speaker and the. Not physically, but wire it between the two. Which you could find like a slimline Marantz receiver that would.
Which is actually
kind
of what you'd need, because you'd want left-right preamp outputs, left-right line level outputs is what you'd want.
And you could do that, and
that's a heck of an expensive filter.
It is, but if it's what he wants, then it's what he wants. The other solution is just to do a search on, soundbars for models that have other things that he's their other solutions. I would definitely give the true whatever it's called again thing another
true
go.
Volume.
Yeah, give that true volume another go. See if
it only has on or off. There's no slider to adjust, how much. So, the only other solution I would have, as an instead, would be to get a Yamaha soundbar, because they usually have Yamaha's night mode, which does Yamaha's version of night mode.
And Yamaha has whole ranges of soundbars too,
and they're good.
So, and they're good for the most part, except for that one I didn't like too much. But the rest of them are all right, I suppose.
Sorry, Mike.
Sorry. Josh has an 85-inch TV he needs to mount over a gas ribbon fireplace with no mantle. The fireplace is pretty low, so he can mount the TV at a very comfortable viewing height. But he's worried about the heat from the fireplace damaging the TV. He knows there are mantle mounts for keeping the TV above the fireplace when you're not watching it, and then lowering it when you are. But Josh lives in Texas and will use the TV way more than the fireplace, so he'd rather have something like that, but in reverse. Is there a mount that can live in the down position most of the time, but then it can also raise to a safe height for maybe 5 times a year the fireplace will actually be lit? Well, yeah, you can. This is going to sound stupid, but can't you just mount it and then pull it down and leave it down? You could, but maybe he doesn't want to see all the wires and stuff.
Yeah, because those over the fireplace mounts, when you pull them down, you can definitely see, but like all the workings of the mount. Plus, at that point, the TV is like forward as well as down. because it always, they always bring it forward so that it's meant to go in front of the existing mantle. So he's like, I'm assuming he doesn't want that look of, the TV being forward and seeing all the mechanical parts of it behind the vast majority of the time. And then once in a while he pushes it up.
This just probably will not work, but it seems to me that you could just take the regular mount and mount it upside down.
I don't think the springs have the strength.
I don't think the springs would have
the
strength. That would be about it, right?
They're meant to be a damper when you pull it down, not a pneumatic press to hold it up.
Hold it up.
They don't have that kind of strength.
I'm sure you could get something custom made for this. There's lots of custom mounts that could do it. I can't think of any other way of doing it other than mounting it upside down and then somehow, using some sort of system.
Lock. Like you put some kind of a lock.
A lot of them do have locks, don't they? Where you put it into place and there's like a little slide that goes through that locks them in position.
Yeah, because
the other thing you could do is
if you mounted it upside down, it would go up and out. But you're saying, this is for the rare occasion that you're actually moving it up and out of the way of the fireplace. So yeah, it would allow you if you just took a fireplace mount and turned it upside down, it would allow you to. Well, I don't know. You might need a fair amount of strength to push it up and out.
It says an 85-inch TV. It's not exactly insignificant.
It's not going to be a 30-pounder. But I guess you get yourself and another person, and
I'll be honest, you'd have to really anchor that thing because that thing's going to go up. Oh yeah,
the cantilever force.
Right, the cantilever force would be pretty significant. But I guess, there's other solutions here. Other solutions include if you're just trying to get the TV away from the fireplace, right? You could essentially get a variable mount where it can pull straight out in a way.
Yeah, like TV. A full motion mount that just pulls forward. Doesn't move it up or down. But
you don't move it unless you're trying to get it away from the fireplace. You could do that.
Yeah, because some of those give you as much as 1.5 feet. 18 inches.
That I think would be enough.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the easiest solution you have.
I agree.
I would also do some research on this and talk to installers and stuff like that, or just post on some forums.
I suppose the other thing you could do is get one of those ones that it's meant to recess it in your ceiling and then have the TV motorized down from the ceiling, from within the ceiling, which are a lot pricier.
Yeah,
but you could ceiling mount it to do that, and then once in a while you raise it. That's a heck of a lot more expensive solution, but it would work. It would function.
The other thing too, figure out where you're going to have this thing, and then light your fireplace, let it go for a bit, and then figure out how hot it gets.
Yeah,
at that level.
Maybe you mount it a little bit higher than you would like, but it's enough that you just don't have to move it.
Then you figure out from the manufacturer. Yeah, it might even be easier too, just to install some toggle bolts, and then just basically put a shelf right there below your TV that just temporarily goes in there. That's just a heat block.
Yeah, a heat shield, a temporary heat shield
that you put up, and then you could just get a regular mount it there, put the heat shield up whenever the fireplace is in order.
And then, I might like that idea the best of all.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I think I still like the TV. You pull it up and away.
And lock it into
place. And then you sit under it next to the fireplace roasting marshmallows with this 85-inch cantilever TV precariously over your children's head. You're sitting in the back, drinking your hot toddy, watching your kids going, which one's going to get it?
On a mount whose instructions probably clearly state somewhere, do not mount this upside down, no matter what the idiots over at AVRant have mentioned.
It's literally, do not mount that thing upside down. That is a terrible idea.
That might be the best YouTube solution, as in here's the accident waiting to happen and you get a lot of clicks, but so I really like the temporary heat shield idea. I think that's a winner. And if not, then probably just your standard full motion mount that can be pulled forward to get the TV away from the fireplace. I'd probably go with either of those.
Brandon is the fellow who was deciding between the Golden Ear Triton Tower 2s, which have powered subwoofers built in, and the Triton 7 Towers. He wound up finding both at low prices. I do remember this. So he bought and auditioned them both and wound up keeping the 2s. He sold the 7s for a profit, so he's pleased with how all that turned out. Now he's on the hunt for Atmos content. It seems to him that most of the Atmos content is tied to Ultra HD.
You're not wrong.
You're not the only one who's finding that. His current TV is a 55-inch 1080p Samsung. He sits about 12 feet away. Ideally, he would like to still have a flat panel for daytime viewing, and then also have an acoustically transparent projection screen that could come down in front of the flat panel for movies at night. The screen would end up being about 2 feet closer, so roughly a 10-foot viewing distance. Sounds like a 100-inch screen to me.
Yes, it does.
And the room has some light control, blackout curtains over the windows, but it's an open concept room, so there's a small amount of ambient light from other parts of the house.
Okay.
The largest flat panel he could fit would be 65 inches. The largest projection screen would likely be 100 inches, or maybe 110, depending on how wide the casing borders end up being. For the flat panel, he can definitely afford a 65-inch Vizio P series, which are down to $1,200 at Costco.
That's crazy.
The 65 OLED would be pushing things that are around $1,000 more, and he'd need to convince his wife. Would the OLED really, really be worth it? He's sitting 10 feet away?
He's sitting 12 feet away from the flat panel.
Oh, well, I just go with the flat. No, I just go with the Vizio, I think, on this case.
It's so tough. Now that
for
I'm living with
$1,000,
I know.
for $1,000, Rob, it's $1,000.
I completely agree. And living with an OLED, I'm like, man, that is a gorgeous image, and those blacks are so black. And there's no blooming, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous TV. But if I just had a Vizio, a P series or an M series for that matter, the M series, the 65-inch M series is down to under $1,000 now. Isn't that nuts? Yeah. 65-inch Dolby Vision TV that looks that good, and they look darn good. It's really hard to justify the OLED. However, it's so personal, because there's going to be some people who are going to be like, totally worth it, best $1,000 I ever spent. There's going to be some people.
This is not going to be the thing he's going to be watching the movies on.
Not the movies, no. It's for the daytime viewing. Yeah.
And this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You can't justify the extra $1,000, Rob. Not unless you literally just have $1,000 lying around, nothing else to do with it, or $1,000 doesn't mean anything to you. This clearly means something to him, so it's the Vizio. That is the clear choice here.
It's very hard to get away from that. The only other thing I would mention that's tangentially related to this is TCL's brand new 6 series is supposed to be coming out fairly soon. Now, given that the 55-incher was at $600, I don't imagine the 65-inch version is going to be astronomically expensive. And that one's going to be 120 local dimming zones and brighter than the Vizio P series. So if you wanted to wait a little bit on the TV purchase, it might be worth seeing just how good that TCL 6 series, the brand new ones for 2018,
when it comes out,
end up being, because I believe the price is going to be very comparable to what you're considering right now. That's the only other thing I'd mention.
All right. So he's a little concerned about the reports of white line problems on Vizio TVs. He'd be buying at Costco, and they offer an excellent return and exchange policy. So should that be enough to put his mind at ease about a Vizio, or are the reported problems a big enough deal to justify spending more on something else? What are these problems? I haven't heard of them.
Some people, and it's Josh over at Entertainment 2.0, I recommended a Vizio M series to him. He got one, and unfortunately he got one of the units that had this issue, which is, I think his was actually a vertical line, but some people just have, for whatever reason, after some amount of time, a static vertical line shows up, or horizontal line shows up on their TV. Not exactly sure. I haven't heard a complete explanation, but Vizio overall has been pretty good about just replacing or repairing the units that have that issue. Like you say, Costco in the States does have an excellent return and exchange policy. So it wouldn't be enough for me to say don't buy a Vizio. It's certainly not enough for that. One of the reasons you hear about it is because Vizio sells a heck of a lot of TVs.
And that's another thing. I've run into that before too, where people are like, "Oh, well, I take more returns for Vizio TVs than I do for anything else." Well, of course you do. They sell three times the volume of anybody else. Yeah. I would expect there to be more returns. I mean, even if people were just going, "This wasn't big enough, I want a bigger one," they'd still have to return it. So especially since you're buying from Costco, especially since Vizio has been good about these things, it wouldn't deter me, and that's all. I'd
still buy a Vizio. For sure.
And if you can take that however you want. If it's going to deter you, it's going to deter you, but it wouldn't deter me. So what about the reports of burn-in or image retention on OLEDs? That's pretty much been sorted, right? I haven't
Well,
Heard anything about that recently?
if you calibrate them properly and set them so that their peak light output for standard dynamic range is right around where it's supposed to be, 100 to 150 nits.
Basically, if you listen to this podcast and you do the things we say, your TV will be fine. And
Yeah,
you
it
don't
just
leave
it,
in
it just like
torch
it
mode.
doesn't happen. However, a lot of people, and as he said, is going to be for daytime viewing. So a lot of people are setting it to 200, 250, even 300 nits just for standard dynamic range, because it's pretty easy to do that. You just turn up the OLED light setting. Even in cinema mode, if you turn up the OLED light setting, you can get it up there without much problem. And then if all you watch is one news channel all day, every day, and it's on for 6 hours continuously with their stupid little logo that never moves, it can happen. It is possible to create permanent, semi-permanent, or not really full-on burn-in, because it's not a plasma, it's not a CRT, but essentially permanent image retention.
I mean, a perfect
It
example
is
is my in-laws bought a 50 or 55-inch Samsung Plasma on my recommendation. They watch nothing but news. The only time news isn't, and it is on 24/7 at their house. It was when they were around there; they had passed, but their TV still lives. Their TV is at my brother-in-law's house now, and the reason why it doesn't have any burn-in issues or anything else is because when they got it, I immediately went over there and turned it off of torch mode and put it into the regular modes and stuff like that. Never had an issue. Never had an issue with that TV. No one's ever said, how come that it still says, CNN or MSNBC or whatever channel. I don't know what they watch. Why does it still say that over there? I'm like, no one's ever said that, because it never happened, because I made sure to make the settings right. Make the settings right, you'll be fine. Take care of your stuff. Like, how come these cars are constantly crashing? Well, it's not the car that's crashing, dude. It's the people driving them. This is the same thing. It's not the TV that's getting the burn-in. It's the incorrect settings of the owners that's making a problem for the TV.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's even more difficult to get permanent image retention on an OLED than it was on any of even the best plasmas. So it's pretty difficult. The reason they don't cover it under warranty is because they consider it abuse of the television.
It is abuse. They are right.
Yeah.
They're right. So the projector side, he still wants to stick to a lower budget, but he'd rather pay a bit extra for something that will last versus going really cheap and wishing he got something better. So he's considering the Epson HC4000 projector and the motorized tab-tensioned acoustically transparent screen from Elite Screens. Do we think these are good choices? Is tab tensioning on a screen a must? It is not a must. I mean,
and at 100 inches, it's a little bit less of a concern,
because you have more weight basically holding it down. The whole thing is very big. Now, where are the air vents in your room? Because that is a consideration that you will have to take into when you're deciding whether or not you're going to spend the extra for tab tension. If your air vent is going to be blowing on or near your screen, tab tension becomes much more relevant than if the air handlers are on the other side of the room.
It's a little bit less when it's acoustically transparent, because the air actually can go through the screen, but it will still cause some waves if it's blowing right on the thing.
I mean, tab tensions is nice. I've had a tab tension screen before. It is very nice to have. They are,
and in my opinion, if you're over 120 inches, you start to really want it, because you really want it to be pulled taut to the sides. Once you start getting that much larger size, it starts getting easier and easier to see waves the larger you go.
So is it a must? I don't know that it's a must, but if the price differential isn't that big, I would go with it, because I think it's gonna make a big enough difference. So what we're gonna have to see, is Rob's about to tell us, is what the different tension screens are, and how much it would be difference for non-tensioned.
So first of all, if you go with Elite Screens, get their Acoustic Pro UHD fabric. They have other acoustically transparent fabrics. They're not as good. You want the Acoustic Pro UHD. So he wants motorized roll down. Their most affordable one would be the Spectrum series that is not tensioned. It is available in 100-inch size, and it's right around $500, which is pretty darn good for a very good acoustically transparent screen that is motorized, just not tensioned, right around $500. Pretty darn good. If you want the tension version, that is their Saker series, so it's their Saker tension series. Same size, 100 inches, gets you with the same fabric, Acoustic Pro UHD. All of a sudden, the price jumps to right around $930. So it's nearly doubling the price to get the tensioning.
I'm not going to answer that. I don't think I'm going to answer this question for him. I think that should answer it for him.
Sure, yeah. You're going to see what you can afford. Yeah.
Which you can afford in this one, because I think that you'll probably end up being happy with either. If you can squeeze out the extra $430 for the tension screen, I think it's probably worth it on my end. Now, if you don't have the $430, I don't think you're going to be unhappy with the other screen.
Yeah, and for me, the key is that you're looking at the 100-inch size. So there, if you're saying, I'm going 100-inch size, I want to save the money, I'm getting the Spectrum without the tensioning, I'm like, good on you. I'm totally thumbs up to that. As for the Epson Home Cinema 4000 projector, I think that's a fantastic choice. You said you've got some light control, but it's not completely blacked out, so you're not going to miss the incrementally better black levels from the more expensive 5040 UB. So I think that's a fantastic choice. It's nice and bright. It's got the wide color that the $1,500 DLP projectors can't match. For 100-inch size, it'll be fantastic. So yeah, good choices. And all in, if you got the 4000 and the non-tension screen, you're looking at $2,200 all in for a 4K HDR capable projection setup 100-inch screen, motorized. $2,200 all in. It's pretty good.
Since the projector will be mostly for movies, should you opt for a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio screen instead of 16 by 9? The width can't be more than 95 inches in either case. I think you're just asking this question to hear Rob and I fight again. And I don't appreciate that, sir.
If you're going with the Elite, it kind of makes the choice for you because the Spectrum isn't available in a 2.35 to 1.
There you go. I win. As always, I win.
I tell you to get the 16 by 9 anyway.
You got to go 16 by 9. You got to go 16 by 9 because if not, then you're going to have this itty bitty image for not itty bitty, but much smaller image for 16 by 9 content. Being with black bars on the side for the 2.3 on that 2.35 to 1.
Let's just add, not all movies are 2.35 to 1. There's plenty that are 1.85. So what you're gonna either have blank spaces to left and right, or you're gonna crop off the top and bottom for those, and that's lots of movies are that. So. Besides, the choice of electric screen decides it for you anyway. So 16 by 9, 100 inches.
Now here's the big wrinkle. He can't afford to get both the new 4K flat panel and the 4K projector set up at the same time. He plans to get both eventually, but which should he get first?
I have my vote.
I'm going to say the flat panel.
Okay.
I'm going to go with flat panel.
Reasoning?
The reasoning is very simple. When you buy something, you want to be excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go from a smaller screen to a bigger screen, you're excited about it.
Plus 1080p to 4K with HDR.
Yeah. When you go from the projector screen down to the flat panel, I think that you're gonna not want to spend that money. Basically, you're gonna be. You might get to you're like, I know what, let's just use the projector all the time. So maybe you can end up saving money that way. But if you did, then you wouldn't need the. Well, I mean, you still need the acoustically transparent, but you wouldn't need the tab tension. You could do it, whatever. But that's what I say. I say go flat panel first.
Okay, I was gonna say go projector first, because my thinking was let's just get the biggest difference you can. And there's no bigger difference than going from a 55-inch 1080p to a 100-inch 4K HDR. That's a big old difference.
Right.
I think you won't know what you're missing because you're watching the same flat panel during the day that you've been watching all this time. So it's not a downgrade there, but it's a huge upgrade for movie time. And then also, as a side bonus, it gives you time for that TCL to come out.
I mean, I can get behind that. The danger of going my way is that you get the bigger flat panel and somebody in your house, not you, decides that that's big enough. You don't need
the projector. Oh.
So that's the danger of going my way. I think the smarter move is to do it my way because I think that you're incrementally increasing size, but it could very well be the next purchase you make might end up being your last purchase because somebody says, hey, that's enough. Hey, we don't need anything other than this. In which case, Rob would be right. I think you could go either way. So I think that's my thinking right there.
We sure solved that question for him.
Yeah, I just. Lastly, he asked, did I ever get my audio working properly through my PS3? And the answer is I haven't turned it on since that day.
There you go.
And there you go. Nick. Brent Butterworth led a budget subwoofer under $300 shootout over at the Wirecutter. The top pick ended up being the Monoprice 9723, which is only $99 before shipping, although the total price with shipping ends up being about $135. Subs from BIC and Dayton also fared quite well, and what Nick found most interesting was that the listening tests were done blind. So what do we think of the results? Would this be helpful for the many folks out there who might want a $500 plus sub but can't afford it? No. That's my answer to that. I gotta be honest with you. I have owned $100 subs. Mm-hmm. I have owned $100 subs. I've gotten good reviews, and they are fine little subs for what they are. They are great for office setups. Mm-hmm. They're great if you're in a very small room and you're on a very tight budget.
They play lower than your cheap bookshelf speakers do.
That's right. If you're looking for I am sorry. I cannot believe the prices that subs are these days compared to where they used to be. I don't know that they're ever going to get lower than $350, which is what, with the STF 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever
STF
it was.
2. I still miss that sub.
I don't think they're ever going to get lower than that. I think a $500 sub is a ridiculous value. I really do.
Remember, you had to get your Axiom EP500 because that was like the cheapest way to get truly down to 20 hertz at one point. And what was that? Wasn't at the time? Wasn't it like $850 or something?
No, it was more than that. It was it was more than that. It was around. What is this on my phone?
And that was back then.
That was a long time ago. Right now, it's like do I think $300,000 because Axiom keeps raising their prices. But $500 to get a truly 20 hertz experience from SVS is insane. It's nuts. And if you want to have a subwoofer, you should buy a subwoofer, an actual subwoofer. If you want one of these things, that's fine. But it's all this is a woofer. You are adding a woofer to your existing speakers, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're wanting a sub, that's the thing that bothers me. They call them subwoofers. They are not subwoofers. That's not what they do. They play bass.
Yeah.
You know what pretty close is? Not doing it is what pretty close is. That's the way I feel about that.
These definitely do fill in the low end. I mean, for example, if you started with a, you went out, you got some of those Behringer or Dayton inexpensive bookshelf speakers.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A pair of those, and then you're like, I'm just not getting the bass I want, but I've only got, $150 to spend. You could do worse than this for sure.
I'm not saying they're bad. I can't stress that enough. I'm not saying that they don't perform well for their price point. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you really want a subwoofer, you're going to be in the same boat I was, which is I bought a $100 subwoofer and felt like I could have taken that money and just set it on fire because it absolutely did nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't do nothing. It did something. It just didn't do what I wanted, which was a subwoofer.
Now, what I will say is a while back, I used to mention Onkyo's SKW203, which was like, at one point you could sort of find it in their 5.1 speaker packages, and they also sold it individually on its own, and you could get it for about $100. And I was like, for a 10-inch sub that you can get for $100, it's not that bad. It's kind of okay. And that was actually included in this shootout, and they thought this Monoprice and one of the BICs and one of the Daytons were better. And I don't really doubt that. It's been a long time since that SKW203 existed. It's been a long, long time, and the idea that Monoprice could bring out something bigger and better for the same $100, I totally believe it. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, for what a $100 sub can do, I can 100% get behind the idea that this Monoprice does it the best, or in the most, value conscious way. I don't doubt that for a second, because that's kind of what they do over there, right? So in that way, yeah. But it's not the equal of a $500 sub. If that's what you want is the performance of a $500 sub, you got to get a $500 sub.
Yeah. So he asked, do we think a similar shootout with the budget increased to $600 might produce any surprising results? I don't really think so. I mean,
you're going to see HSU,
you're going to see SVS, HSU,
Outlaw,
REL, right? Outlaw, which is just HSU again.
Yeah. I mean,
I
maybe
might be.
maybe
There may be.
Emotiva or
Yeah, it could be. I mean, surprising in that maybe I would rank them differently.
sure.
Could be. Because a lot of times we're not suggesting subs based solely on one characteristic, whatever that characteristic they may be judging them on. A lot of times we're looking at things like SVS, for example. We know that they have a really good protection of their drivers, and they're never going to bottom out. They're never going to destroy themselves. So that to us is worth something, and that's never going to be tested in this sort of blind listening test. True.
Yeah, that would be a
linearity.
weird thing. A stress blind test.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Well, even true linearity would not be, because these are all listened to in rooms and everything else.
Yeah.
And yes,
with content, not
with content
test
and
tones
everything
and
else.
sweeps.
So true linearity is also something that I value, and that is not something that would be tested in this sort of test. So might the results be surprising? Yeah, it could be that
That's true.
such and such happened that made one stand out that maybe wouldn't have stood out in a different situation, which would be fine. I got no problems with that.
Yep.
I mean, the same thing happened in like I had in my $1,500 to $2,000 speaker shootout, floor standing speaker shootout. One guy came in absolutely convinced that the Dollies were going to win. He loved them in his house. The minute he judged them dead last.
Yeah.
In the blind test, and then spent the next 2 hours after the tests were over convincing himself that the Dollies actually won. Like, I just watched it happen. I was watching. I'm like, dude, are you seriously having this? He's like, yeah, but maybe this and that. And now that I really listen to them, I can really hear the difference, and I can really hear how that bass is really so much better than the other ones. I'm like, okay, you keep telling yourself that, dude. I mean, they did sound good in his room. They just didn't sound good in mine. So within the article, Brent describes what you might get in terms of an audible difference if you were to upgrade from his budget pick to something like RSL. I said REL. RSL.
Oh, that's what you meant. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there is
10S, or an SVS SP1000, as well as the difference you get with a $1,000 HSU or Power Sound audio model. He also describes the benefits of using more than one subwoofer, saying the best solution for most people is 2 subs, but with the caveat that doubling up on really small subs doesn't make as much sense as getting one larger, more capable sub. He implies that the Monoprice 9723 is capable and inexpensive enough that it would probably make more sense to buy 2 of them versus one $400 sub. What are our thoughts on all of that? I have to read this article. I'm actually going to open it because I didn't read this article.
I largely agree overall.
If you're going to buy one $400 sub, can you wait and buy one $500 sub? Because in which case you can get a good one. Because I don't know many $400 subs that exist out there.
There's the RSL, the Speedwoofer 10S. There's the Emotiva, their Bass X S12. There's HSU's VTF1.
Right.
So those are like the likely so it's funny because all of those occupy the space of this is as good as you can do for under $500, and none of them can hit 20 hertz linearly.
Right.
They're all rated at 25 hertz, like not minus 3 dB at 25 hertz rather than 20 hertz. It just seems to be.
If you could save $400, you can save $500, and at $500 you get 20 hertz.
That's right. That's right.
So I would agree with what he's saying.
Yeah.
In that, if you compare specifically against these $400 can't hit to 20 hertz subs, but I would not agree with him saying that you should get these instead of a single sub that can hit $500 sub that can hit to 20 hertz. So that I think he phrased that very well. How about that? He phrased it very well.
Yeah, I'm largely in agreement there. And you could absolutely make the case of I can either get 2 of these Monoprice subs or I can get one $350 to $400 sub, but I can't spend $500 either way. Depending on what it is that you want to do, you could totally make a case for the 2. Because if you're like, what I want to do is have people over and for everyone to get uniform bass, you're not going to do that with one sub no matter what you do. So you better get the 2 subs.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to be done because Dan's question is forever long.
Is there a short one that we can sneak in there just so we hit an even 12?
I instead of grabbing the scroll bar, I grabbed the whole thing window, and now the window moved, and now I'm doing it again. Why is it not grabbing the thing?
Oh, you know what?
Okay.
Chris H's question is totally related to what we just talked about. So he would have been the next one. So we're gonna let's do Chris because it's super related.
Okay, Chris recently upgraded to an SVS SP12 NSD in his main system, and he moved the old RCA sub to his bedroom to replace a tiny Monoprice sub. He immediately noticed how boomy and sloppy the RCA sounded in the smaller room. Even the Monoprice sounded better. Now he's looking to buy a whole new sub for the bedroom. It's a sickness, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
We've all got it.
Oh, yeah.
The room is 11 by 11 by 8. That is a bedroom. I think you wouldn't have to tell me that it was a bedroom. Just tell me the dimensions. And the sub lives right near the listening position, so output isn't really concerned. But he'd like to hit 28 hertz or lower while keeping the sub as compact as possible and staying around $200. Here are some of the options he's seen: the Emotiva S8, the BIC F12, the Dayton Audio Sub 1200. And apparently we should be saying that other one. The S8 is the smallest and most expensive at this time, but it has the best reviews. The F12 is the biggest with the largest amp and lowest extension. The Sub 1200 is the cheapest, but also has the weakest amp. He's leaning towards the S8 based on reviews and reputation of Emotiva, but it's open to suggestions. What do we think? What about the what was the other?
You could go with Monoprice's larger one. He had a tiny Monoprice, but you could go with the one that Brent just suggested.
$100, man. 135 shipped.
135 shipped. You can get them from Amazon too. You don't have to get it directly from Monoprice. So that's the 9723, super memorable, but that's the particular model, the Monoprice 9723. However, it isn't super tiny. It's basically a 17.5-inch cube, which
big.
Foot and a half in every direction, more or less. It's not super tiny at all. And he said compact is one of the things he wanted. The BIC F12.
Well, the BIC V1020 was the runner-up of this thing, and it's supposed to be pretty tiny. But
it's pretty small. It's not super extension. So interesting because the BIC F12 was mentioned in that Wirecutter review. They got a bum unit. They got a lemon unit, so they couldn't actually put it to the test.
Oh, that stinks.
It does stink. So the BIC F12 is, I think it's 1 inch smaller in one dimension than the Monoprice. so you were saying that's the biggest one you were considering. I know that BIC F12, and I think it's pretty darn good. Had it been tested in that Wirecutter article, who knows? It might have won the thing because their second choice was an even smaller BIC that was working, so they could actually test it properly. So yeah, not surprisingly, in terms of cheap subs that can actually get down to around 25 hertz, it ends up being the ones with the biggest boxes, because how else are you going to do it at a low price, right?
Right.
Yeah. So is that, if the BIC F12 or the Monoprice 9723, both being very similar in size, which is largest out of these, if you can fit it, I have very little doubt that those would be, the top candidates there. I don't know. That S8 is so small. I don't know if I believe Emotiva when it says it hits 28 hertz. I don't know if I fully believe them. I'm thinking it's more like 35, 36.
Well, yeah, that's usually what 28 means.
Yeah.
That's for extremely low values of 35. We can do this Roy one. I think it's short enough, right?
Okay. Well, are you in agreement with that? That's
Yeah. I mean, go for the. I mean, it really ends up being. I think we're gonna end up skipping Roy now.
Sorry.
We're gonna. Sorry, Roy. It's Rob's fault. I think it ends up being a matter of volume. If this is literally, if you really want something really small, we always say this. You can subwoofers. You can pick two.
Yeah.
Low, cheap, and small.
Yeah.
You can play low. It can be cheap, or it can be small. You can pick two of those because it can't be all of them. You want low and small, ain't gonna be cheap.
Right.
You want cheap and low, it's not gonna be small.
Yep.
So
Exactly right.
That's what it comes down to. So if you're going for cheap, you're gonna have to lose small.
Yeah.
And so whichever is the biggest one that you can buy that will fit in your location is probably the best one for you.
Yeah. Which is that big in that Monoprice. That's how they did it.
All right, who we got left over? Dan and Roy for sure, and then who else?
Dan and Roy, and then we also have Jack and David and John, and then Alex wrote in today, so I'm just letting Alex know we have his question.
Okay. We want to thank our listeners of the week one last time. We're going to thank Carl and James for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link to give us a PayPal donation. So thank you, Carl, and thank you, James.
For sure. Carl, James, thank you for those donations.
I also want to thank our 53 patrons for supporting us over at patreon.com.
For sure. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thanks so much to our 53 patrons.
We want to thank Anthony, Chris, Carl, and Bruno for supporting the podcast. Anthony talked us up to Accessories for Less. Chris talked to SVS. And Carl wrote to Surge X. Bruno, of course, supported us by helping us out by keeping the We Watch Movies podcast going.
That's right. So Anthony, Chris, Carl, Bruno, thank you for supporting the podcast. And I'll put out the shout out once again at the end here, youtube.com/AVRant. It's our YouTube page. We're so close to the necessary 1,000 subscribers to allow us to stay in YouTube's partnership program. If you can help us out, it would be super appreciated. I think we're going to make it. I really hope we do.
I hope we do too. All right, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.